Are you anxiously awaiting the rapture, when you will be lifted up off the ground and go up into the sky to meet the Lord in the air? As a Bible verse apparently predicts, the Lord being the returned Christ Spirit, that is. The image on the screen shows one person's artistic rendition of the fulfillment of this rapture prophecy in an image of many people literally rising up into the sky. Well, there is another way of looking at the meaning of this prophecy from 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 17. Watch this video to find out what the spiritual and very logical meaning of this passage really is. Here is another artist's concept of people literally going up into the air. These are two of the more popular images of the rapture interpretation of Bible prophecies of the New Testament that can be found on the internet and elsewhere. As mentioned, the prophecy is found in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 17. You see here the original version of verse 17 in Greek, which was the original language in which this book of the Bible was written. This is the Greek word aera that is translated into the English word air. But note, the word can also correctly be translated into the English word atmosphere. This is the one and only verse in the Bible that is the source of this element of the end times rapture prophecy of people being lifted up into the air. As noted here, this is from the King James Version of the Bible, as they translate the Greek original into Middle or Elizabethan English when the King James Version was published in the year 1611, over 400 years ago. Quote, "Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds, to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord." End quote. I added the bold emphasis on the phrase "in the air." Other Bible versions have similar translations into English from the original Greek. Here's that verse if we substitute the word atmosphere for air. Quote, "Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds, to meet the Lord in the atmosphere, and so shall we ever be with the Lord." End quote. Just keep this in mind as we continue. Let's just review the elements of this verse. The followers of the returned Christ would be gathered together, and they would be lifted up into the air or atmosphere. Thus our more literal-minded readers end up with this sort of vision of the effect of Christ's return. Let's talk a little bit about science, about Earth's atmosphere. This illustration and the table describe the 5 layers of the air, the atmosphere. The troposphere, the bottom layer, the layer we on Earth live in, is from sea level to about 7 miles above sea level, as you can see in the bottom row of the table. At the top of the troposphere, the temperature can be as low as approximately minus 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Awfully cold up there. You would not want to be more than 1.5 miles above the surface of the Earth without a spacesuit and oxygen supply. The gases in the air become too thin for the available oxygen molecules to sustain human life above that 1.5 mile point above sea level. There is no oxygen in outer space outside of the Earth's atmosphere. If you're not familiar with the rapture prophecy interpretation, you might wonder about what the rapture interpreters think will happen to the bodies of the chosen people who will be lifted up to meet the returned Christ in the air. There are 2 main versions. One version theorizes that the physical bodies of the people who are chosen to meet the Lord in the air will simply disappear and leave their clothes behind. This photo and similar ones can be found in some discussions of what will happen when the selected people are lifted up. They simply would disappear, leaving cars, buses, airplanes, etc., without their operators, causing crashes and mayhem. A rather strange scenario, worthy of a Hollywood production. The other interpretation explains that the physical bodies of the selected people will become glorified in such a way that the cold, lack of oxygen, etc., of going up into the sky has no effect on those selected to meet Jesus in the air. I think this version came about more recently as science has documented the hazards to the human body if they, with their regular material bodies, would go up into the upper levels of the atmosphere. Yet, even if we receive glorified magic bodies, where in the sky or out there in outer space are they going? Where is heaven located in our physical universe? Here, or here, or over here? I think you can see that a purely literal and materialistic interpretation of this prophecy is problematic. You may be thinking, what else could that passage possibly mean but the literal interpretation? All those people being raptured and lifted up from earth into the sky. The cold sky with little warmth, then as one goes higher and higher, insufficient oxygen to support life. Next, I will provide a further consideration in your search for the true meaning of the phrase, meeting the Lord in the air. Note that the information I'll be sharing with you will require, on your part, a thoughtful and patient approach to learning. In other words, please be patient as I read some quotes. It'll go faster than you are thinking at this moment. I will be showing you several examples, evidence, from the sacred writings from another faith of God that will show how we, God's creation, can be lifted up to be with the Lord without our feet leaving the ground. I will read this prayer that was revealed by the manifestation of God who founded that faith of God. It contains a clue. See if you can spot it. Quote, "Create in me a pure heart, O my God, and renew a tranquil conscience within me, O my hope. Through the Spirit of power confirm thou me in thy cause, O my best beloved, and by the light of thy glory reveal unto me thy path, O thou the goal of my desire. Through the power of thy transcendent might, lift me up unto the heaven of thy holiness, O source of my being, and by the breezes of thine eternity gladden me, O thou who art my God. Let thine everlasting melodies breathe tranquility on me, O my companion, and let the riches of thine ancient countenance deliver me from all except thee, O my master. And let the tidings of the revelation of thine incorruptible essence bring me joy, O thou who art the most manifest of the manifest, and the most hidden of the hidden." End quote. Note that passage, highlighted in yellow, quote, "Through the power of thy, God's, transcendent might, lift me up unto the heaven of thy holiness, O source of my being, and by the breezes of thine eternity gladden me, O thou who art my God." End quote. So the person saying this prayer is asking God to lift him or her up unto the heaven of thy holiness. A couple more examples from this faith's sacred writings. Quote, "Know thou that he is truly learned who hath acknowledged my revelation, and drunk from the ocean of my knowledge, and soared in the atmosphere of my God's love, and cast away all else besides me, and taken firm hold on that which hath been sent down from the kingdom of my wondrous utterance." End quote. And another quote, "O Son of Spirit, burst thy cage asunder, and even as the phoenix of love, soar into the firmament of holiness. Renounce thyself, and filled with the Spirit of mercy, abide in the realm of celestial sanctity." End quote. The top quote states, "soared in the atmosphere of my," meaning God's, "love," and on the bottom it speaks of soaring into the firmament of holiness. Two more quotes. This is the day on which the bird of utterance hath warbled its melody upon the branches, in the name of its Lord, the God of mercy. Blessed is the man that hath, on the wings of longing, soared towards God, the Lord of the judgment day. And then, we beseech God that he may graciously vouchsafe his grace unto all men, and enable them to attain the knowledge of him and of themselves. By my life, whoso hath known him shall soar in the immensity of his love, and shall be detached from the world and all that is therein. In both of these verses it speaks of soaring towards God. This imagery is of flying in the air, much as a bird soars in the sky, and much like the imagery of the returned Christ's followers soaring into the air, into the atmosphere of his love. Another quote, O peoples of the earth, God, the eternal truth, is my witness that streams of fresh and soft-flowing waters have gushed from the rocks through the sweetness of the words uttered by your Lord, the unconstrained, and still ye slumber. Cast away that which ye possess, and on the wings of detachment soar beyond all created things. Thus biddeth you the Lord of creation, the movement of whose pen hath revolutionized the soul of mankind. And a few additional quotes to highlight the spiritual lifting up or soaring of the believer. Therein is thy habitation, if on the wings of thy soul thou soarest to the realm of the infinite and seekest to attain thy goal. Although materially dwelling on earth, yet in reality soar in the realm of heaven. Drink your fill from the wellspring of wisdom, and soar ye in the atmosphere of wisdom, and speak forth with wisdom and eloquence. The wings of men may be sanctified from the mire of self and desire, and be made worthy to soar in the atmosphere of God's love. Next, let's go back to that verse in 1 Thessalonians. I've revised that verse from 1 Thessalonians to reflect a more spiritual translation. Quote, Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds, to meet the Lord in the atmosphere of God's love, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. End quote. Just keep this in mind as we continue. I think by now you get the drift of this review, that soaring in the atmosphere of God's love is a far, far more spiritually relevant response to the return of the Christ Spirit than people bodily going up into the sky. You may recall that in the verse about going up into the air, it was also mentioned they would be caught up together with them in the clouds. But what are these clouds? Are they literal clouds? Water vapor that has formed in the atmosphere of earth? Be aware, in other prophecy verses, these clouds are referred to as the clouds of heaven, not the clouds of earth. In prophecies, our author of those other writings we reviewed often speak of a couple meanings of the clouds in prophecy. First, they are clouds of grace and mercy that rain the abundance of blessings from God upon His creation, and clouds that obscure the spiritual vision of humanity from seeing and recognizing their Lord when He appears. Here are some quotes about the meaning of clouds in prophecies of the coming of the returned Messiah. These quotes are from the prophet founder of that other faith. Quote, By the term clouds is meant those things that are contrary to the ways and desires of men. End quote. Quote, These clouds signify in one sense the annulment of laws, the abrogation of former dispensations, the repeal of rituals and customs current amongst men, the exalting of the illiterate faithful above the learned opposers of the faith. End quote. Clouds mean the appearance of that immortal beauty in the image of mortal man, with such human limitations as eating and drinking, poverty and riches, glory and abasement, sleeping and waking, and such other things as cast doubt in the minds of men, and cause them to turn away. All such veils are symbolically referred to as clouds." End quote. Please keep these explanations in mind when you hear about the returning Christ coming down out of the sky on a literal cloud. Perhaps now you can recognize the symbolic meanings of these clouds of heaven. There is another consideration you might ponder. The end of the world. This is the original Greek language of the book of Matthew, chapter 24, verse 3, wherein one of the prophecies in the book of Matthew mentions what has been translated in the King James Version of the Bible as saying, end of the world, shown here in the purple box at the bottom. That phrase in Greek is sideiestou aionos. Apologies to all Greeks for my poor pronunciation. Here is the King James Bible's version, the English translation of that verse from the original Greek. Quote, "And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming, and of the end of the world?" End quote. This is one of the best-known prophecies that the Christ would return. His disciples are asking Jesus to tell them the signs of his future return. They include the understanding that there would be an end of the aionos, the world, according to the King James translation from the Greek. These are the only verses in the New Testament that mention the end of the world and use the word aionos, being translated into English in the King James Version as the word world. But note, this is an error in translation from the Greek into English. Looking more closely at that Greek word, translated in the King James as world, it is pronounced aionos. Now, modern linguistic experts on ancient Greek, as used in the original Greek of the New Testament, now state that the real meaning of the word aionos is eon, age, or era, meaning a long period of time. The translators for the King James Version of the Bible back in the year 1611 mistranslated this word aionos. So the phrase end of the world should read end of the age. Here's Matthew chapter 24 verse 3 again, but this time the correct English translation is provided. Quote, "And as he, Jesus, sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming, and the end of the age?" End quote. This is a list of just some of the Bible versions, English translations, that have changed all the verses that previously stated end of the world to the corrected version, end of the age. This list includes the New King James Version, where the yellow arrow is pointing. The bottom line is that Jesus Christ did not foretell the end of the world. Rather, he prophesied the end of an age when he returns. And that means when he returns, a new age begins. One other short but important note. When the Christ returns, he will have a new name. The book of Revelation says so in two places. First, in chapter 2, verse 17, quote, He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To the one who conquers I will give some of the hidden manna, and will give him a white stone with a new name written on the stone, that no one knows except the one who receives it." End quote. You may read this and think it does not say explicitly he'll have a new name, but consider that when Jesus Christ began teaching his message from God and people began to follow him, he too was giving them a white stone, a revelation from God, with his name on it, Christ. Thus his followers took their name, Christians and Christianity, from his divine name, Christ. It would be the same story when the Christ returns, but then with a new name. Now in chapter 3, verse 12 of the book of Revelation, quote, "The one who conquers, I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God. Never shall he go out of it, and I will write on him the name of my God and the name of the city of my God, the New Jerusalem, which comes down from God out of heaven, and my own new name." End quote. This verse is much more explicit and undeniable about his having a new name when he returns. So now you know, when the Christ Spirit with a new name appears, your feet will remain on the ground, but your spirit will soar. And the world will not end, but a new age will begin. Remember the prospect of all things made new when the Christ returns as promised at the end of the book of Revelation in chapter 21, verse 5. The golden age will not instantaneously appear. There will be great turmoil as present-day man-made institutions and patterns of behavior will be challenged by the new laws of God brought by the returned Christ, as more and more of the peoples of the earth become aware of these divine laws, that is. But the physical world will not end. My hope is that this video will bring you some comfort and ease of mind, even as we continue into a turbulent time. Are you at all curious about the identity of that other religion and its prophet founder, the source of those wonderful words describing being spiritually elevated, soaring into the atmosphere of God's love? To answer the curiosity of some of you, I've included a couple more slides to tell you just a wee bit about the author of those quotes and the religion he founded. The name of the author of those readings we discussed is Bahá'u'lláh. It means the glory of God. That is his divine title. He was born in the year 1817 and passed away in 1892 in the Holy Land. Baha'u'lláh was born in Persia, but due to his beliefs and teachings, he was exiled several times in his life by both the Persian government and the Ottoman Empire. He declared his station as the promised one of all the faiths of humankind, including that he is the return of the Christ Spirit promised throughout the Bible. He made this declaration in 1863. His final exile was ordered by the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire to the prison city of Akka, in what was within the Ottoman Empire at the time. He was detained there from 1868 through 1892, when he passed away. The faith that Baha'u'lláh established is the Baha'i faith. The year 1844 is considered to be the year of the beginning of the faith, with the pronouncement of the forerunner to Baha'u'lláh, a man titled the Bab, which means the gate, who foretold the imminent appearance of the Messiah, Baha'u'lláh, who the Bab referred to as him whom God shall make manifest. The word Baha, B-A-H-A, means glory. Baha'i means follower of the glory. A follower of the Baha'i faith is called a Baha'i. The plural is Baha'is. Baha'u'lláh wrote hundreds of books and tablets giving his counsels to the world for this new age. These writings are the sacred writings of the faith. And there are about 8 million Baha'is throughout the world, with about 170,000 or so being here in the USA. The photo is of the Baha'i House of Worship located just north of Chicago in Wilmette, Illinois, along the shore of Lake Michigan. It is one of 8 continental houses of worship, or temples, located throughout the world. And here are the other 7 continental houses of worship, or temples, in the world. Starting at the top left is the House of Worship in Kampala, Uganda. To its right is the one outside of Sydney, Australia. Next to that is the one in Hofheim, Langenhain, Germany. Then the one in Panama City, Panama, in the bottom left. Bottom right is the temple in Apia, Samoa, which is considered to be the continental temple for the Asia Pacific. The photo in the red border is the temple in New Delhi, India. It's commonly referred to as the Lotus Temple. The photo in the yellow border shows the temple with the lovely reflecting pool, which is outside of Santiago, Chile. I'm showing you all these houses of worship basically to illustrate that the Baha'i faith truly is a cherished religion to millions of people throughout the world, so firmly dedicated to Bahá'u'lláh and his teachings as to raise up these wonderful edifices for the worship of God. Buildings do not make a religion, but the gathering of the devoted believers worshiping God do. A Baha'i temple, by the way, is referred to in the Baha'i writings as the dawning place of the praise of God. Here are some of the basic teachings of Bahá'u'lláh and the Baha'i faith. First, there's only one God, and there is only one religion of God, which has been revealed progressively from God's manifestations, who have included Moses, Krishna, Zoroaster, Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, and of course the Bab and Baha'u'lláh, and others to come in the future. Second, the oneness of humankind. We are all members of one race, the human race. Third, the equality of women and men. Male and female are equal in the sight of God and should have equal opportunities on His earth. 4, the independent investigation of truth is a requirement for all individuals. We are responsible for our own spiritual advancement and must not blindly follow traditions, movements, and the opinions of others. In line with this teaching, the Baha'i faith does not have a clergy. Number 5, the elimination of prejudice. Prejudice results in much suffering, wars, destruction, enmity, and is most often based on misinformation or even disinformation. Number 6, the unity of science and religion. Baha'u'lláh teaches that science and religion must agree. Science without religion can become a monster, and religion without science becomes mere superstition. Economic justice, abolishing the extremes of poverty and wealth. Cooperation must replace competition as the basis of organized economic activity. His laws accept the rights of private ownership of property and the need for private economic initiative. He calls for establishment of a minimum income level that meets basic human needs. He also calls for progressive taxation to fund the building and maintenance of an ever-advancing civilization. However, the basic foundation should be spiritual, basically like a what would Jesus do, or what would Baha'u'lláh do, or what would Buddha do, etc. Then there's the teaching that we need to select an auxiliary international language, and the nations of the earth should select it. This is to augment each nation's own language or languages. It would be a supplement to that, and that's to foster understanding between nations and peoples. And Baha'u'lláh counseled humanity on how to achieve world peace. Humanity must establish a world parliament whose members must be elected by the people in their respective countries, and whose election should be confirmed by their respective governments. and a supreme tribunal whose judgment will have a binding effect even in such cases where the parties concerned did not voluntarily agree to submit their case to its consideration. And in the words of Bahá'u'lláh, quote, "O concourse of the sovereigns of the world, for thereby will the tempest of discord be stilled amongst you, and your peoples find rest. Should any one among you take up arms against another, rise ye all against him, for this is naught but manifest justice." End quote. Those are a few of the basic spiritual and social teachings. There are many, many others, virtually an ocean of the Word of God to dive into. There are also laws to be followed. The Baha'i Faith is not a cult or a club or a mere philosophy. The laws are from God, as revealed to Bahá'u'lláh, and each person who independently chooses to be a Baha'i should strive to obey those laws. Check out this website for access to the sacred and authoritative writings of the Baha'i Faith, www.bahai.org/library. And now a couple slides with some websites and some other sources of information about the Baha'i Faith. First listed here is a website, Bahai.org, Bahai.org. It's the international official website for those seeking information about the faith. You can also access the library through this site. Then below that is Bahai.us, Bahai.us. That's the official website for seekers for the USA. I do also give there the contact phone number, 1-800-228-6483. You can call that number, give your contact information, and the national office will refer your contact information to Baha'is close to you who could then contact you for you to meet some Baha'is and discuss things if you wish. Third there is Bahai.org/library. That's free access to the sacred and authoritative texts and some other publications by the worldwide Baha'i community. And at the bottom, BahaiBookstore.com. That's the official bookstore for the USA. It also has music and videos and some other items, and anyone can buy from them. If you are interested in finding a book that provides an interesting overview of the Baha'i Faith, its main figures, history, beliefs, and its followers, without being preachy or trying to convert you, I recommend this one, Bahá'u'lláh and the New Era by J.E. Esselmont. Having some knowledge of the history of the Bab, Bahá'u'lláh, and the Baha'i Faith will be very helpful to you if or when you get to the point of reading the sacred and authoritative texts. It gives you some background. It is available through Amazon.com and some other online book vendors too. It may even be in your local library for free. And note that it is also free online. There is a free online version through the website I'll show you on the next slide. And that website will also be in the description of this video on YouTube. This is the web address to access the free online version of the book Bahá'u'lláh and the New Era. If you balk at pausing the video and writing down this long e-address, I will put it in the description of this video that's located below the title of the video on YouTube. Or you can always start at the library website, bahai.org/library, highlighted in the blue text on the screen, and just follow the indicated path. And I wish you good luck in your life's quest for spiritual truth. Thank you for watching. Please note that this production is not an official production of the Baha'i Faith community. It was written, produced, and narrated by me alone. Contact me at that email address if you have any questions. All copyright protections are claimed. Do not change any information, slide, diagram, or narration without my permission. And please do not charge a fee to anyone for viewing this video or any part of it. I do not make any money from these videos. I consider this a service and a gift to my fellow human beings.